In the previous decade, natural gas in all its phases of extraction, transmission, and storage have played a major role in the reckless assault on water resources, lands, and climate, and will continue to do so if government and corporations have their way. The Virginia Department of Environmental Quality and the Water Control Board must live up to their namesake, not bow to the corporatocracy, whose Wall Street puppeteers manipulate our economy with strokes on a keyboard, offering government payoffs and revolving doors between industry and political leaders.
This is the culmination of 3 years worth of work by all of these different groups behind us here and individuals coming to basically tell truth to power in the form of the Virginia DEQ.
This is not a hearing, it's a robbery. The DEQ is rushing this through. They are abdicating their job of protecting our water and the drinking water of millions of Virginians by saying that they will issue a blanket permit from the Army Corps of Engineers instead of doing site-specific examination of the threats to water.
They're rushing the process. Mountain Valley hasn't even filed their plans yet. They won't finish filing them until August 25th, and yet they're holding the hearings right now.
Dominion will receive 15% profit guaranteed for just building the thing. It's not about jobs. It's not about keeping the lights on. We don't need the natural gas. The current gas lines are operating at 50% real capacity. A few upgrades would take care of it. There's no need to destroy all this land and water. The projections for natural gas use in Virginia are flat or will be falling. So it's all about greed.
We can build it safely. If we don't, we'll fix it. You know, all these kind of vague assurances. We have assurances that it can't be built safely. We have documentation that it shouldn't be built in this region.
Department of Environmental Quality's job is to protect our water. We have to make sure they understand that we are going to insist that they do their job.
We're running out of options, and we need them to deny this 401 water certificate for Mountain Valley Pipeline, and short of that, and we are facing a catastrophe.
Please be assured that information relevant to the draft additional 401 water quality conditions presented at this public hearing and through public comments in writing.
Virginia's administrative code states the Water Control Board may deny federally approved projects if they will result in violation to water quality standards or impair the beneficial uses of state waters. It can also deny the project if it fails to adequately avoid and minimize impacts to state waters to the maximum extent practicable.
Voice, your concern is heard.
Pipeline industry insiders were allowed to stack the hearing in Radford with hired commenters 3 hours before the published start of that hearing.
We support the draft 401 permit, and we would urge you to keep perspective and understanding that whether for or against the pipeline, prevailing sentiment is for it to be built to all environmental and regulatory standards.
We plan to have two taps off the Mountain Valley Pipeline. One tap will feed directly into our distribution system, Rona Gas, and the other tap will be located in Franklin County, which currently does not have access to natural gas. After reviewing the draft 401 water quality certification, I support the additional conditions that DEQ is proposing, which will protect our natural resources and water quality for future generations to enjoy.
This project could dramatically affect the drinking water of the cities of Salem and Roanoke. The project would cross the Roanoke River and its tributaries over 120 times upriver from Salem and Roanoke, often on or below extremely steep slopes. A report from the pipeline company's own consultant concluded that, quote, a substantial amount of sediment, unquote, from the project that as it comes out of Jefferson National Forest would proceed all the way to either to Niagara Dam or Smith Mountain Lake. We've been told in the brochure by DEQ not to comment about erosion and sedimentation or environmental impacts. DEQ has separated the study of impacts into multiple categories, like Solomon cutting the baby into different parts so that we can comment on the head or the legs or the arms, but not on the overall health of the baby. Water quality does not work like that in real life. Erosion and sedimentation off these steep slopes, which we are familiar with as trail builders, mean not only silt, but bacteria, PCBs, pesticides, herbicides, and whatever else could be washed down the river in a heavy rain. These have a major impact on water quality. We ask, one, that you comply with the Virginia Water Protection Permit Program to analyze water quality and health impacts on individual streams and wetlands. Two, follow the recommendations of the Department of Health and require a complete sanitary survey within 1,000 feet of the pipeline. Three, suspend the comment period until the agency has performed this analysis and given us time to review it. Four, restart the comment period and hold additional public hearings in communities that would be affected by the pipeline. And five, deny permits to non-complying applicants. Thank you.
I've been out on at least 5 surveys with them, and so far to date, they still don't know where our spring is. Our question is, how are y'all gonna know where it's at so you can protect our water? Because that's y'all's job, is to protect our water. My recommendation would be Mountain Valley should have to have a permit for every single river, stream, creek, wetland, puddle that they cross.
On Bent Mountain alone, over a distance of only 6.2 miles, in the headwaters of a Tier 3 stream, the proposed pipeline will cross trout streams 36 times and wetlands 44 times. It will traverse extreme slopes and result in clear-cutting a 125-foot swath through the forest, blasting, entrenching, and road building through an extremely sensitive ecosystem. This most assuredly will result in water quality violations, long-term and permanent degradation of streams, and loss of water body uses, which are all violations of the Clean Water Act. But in particular, you might want to review the state and EPA anti-degradation policy. I worked for DEQ for over 25 years, and I can tell you that any 401, 404 permit application by individual landowners to do any of the things that are proposed by MVP would have been promptly denied, period. All we are asking is that DEQ do the right thing, adhere to its mission to protect state waters and the environment, and base its decisions on facts, science, and the risks associated with this proposed project.
You're well aware of wetlands. You're well aware of estuaries and the Chesapeake Bay, and aware of streams and ponds. Karst is another one of these very sensitive areas. There's one difference. Most of it's underground where it cannot be seen nor studied like the surface environments. This is highly important. Karst, whenever it comes up in any environmental study, is a red flag. It needs to immediately be thought of differently. It cannot be studied with conventional hydrogeological methods. And karst is deep. Water at the surface goes deep. It hits the water table and then flows to springs or wells. You cannot determine the complete porosity and permeability of a karst aquifer by doing linear studies such as electrical resistivity, ground penetrating radar, seismic work, even dye tracing. Although dye tracing is the one effective way to find out where the water comes out once you put it in, but it does not tell you the entire aerially extensive nature of karst. So when you put a pipeline through a field of sinkholes, and surely you've seen probably that the process will be one of mitigation. We come across a sinkhole, we'll do something. We come across a spring, we'll do something. But this is like soldiers going through a minefield. We find a few mines, but one misstep and there's disaster.
You guys need to take your power and your job back and look at all the stream and wetland crossings and not defer to a blanket permit by the Army Corps of Engineers, which is inadequate to the task.
You know, the Mountain Valley Pipeline has been one of the most significant local issues to hit this community since I've been in the General Assembly. People didn't think there was enough dialogue with DEQ. There was no chance to answer questions. And then Delegate Yost and I demanded public hearings, but when they scheduled the public hearings, they didn't put them in the affected jurisdictions. One was in Radford, one was in Chatham. So what Joseph and I did was schedule public meetings in the affected jurisdictions, in this case Roanoke County and the Newport area of Giles, and we just said, DEQ, come answer questions, be open, let's be transparent.
We pushed the director of the Department of Environmental Quality extremely hard, very hard, to encourage him to have not necessarily a public hearing, but a public meeting, which is what this is, which I think is actually a little bit better than a public hearing. You still sign up to speak just like you would in the hearing, but the director actually will be taking questions and providing answers and having a dialogue with individuals, unlike in a hearing where you get up, you have your 3 minutes, you sit down, and that's it.
Delegate Habib and Delegate Yost were really concerned that the public didn't have answers to all the questions that they needed, and they took it upon themselves to get venues, and we were available, and so I just wanted to help.
There are sort of 5 major areas of environmental review that go into this. One is the FERC that I've talked about, Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. We have the nationwide, the Corps' nationwide 12 permit for wetlands and stream crossings. We have our additional 401 water quality certification that the state is doing. There is then the erosion and sediment control and stormwater rules that need to be complied with. And then a 5th thing that we are doing is we're doing some water quality and biological monitoring at DEQ. Our guidelines are to be guided by the law and to be guided by the science. And it's not infrequent for public comment that we receive to result in changes, modifications to what we may or may not recommend.
Does the DEQ actually have the power to kill this process?
If we are unable to determine that there's a reasonable assurance that water quality will be protected, that would give us the legal authority to kill the project.
All right, what's your definition of a reasonable assurance that it will be protected? Major corporations all over the nation or whatever have fast-tracked all kinds of projects, but there's no oversight, nobody even protects it.
If the technical folks have reason to believe that the measures in place are protected, then we have reasonable assurance.
Now, who hires these technical consultants?
Well, the technical consultants for the erosion and sediment control program, which is separate from 401, are hired by us. It's EEE Consulting, and the inspectors that we will have, should the project be approved, would also be hired by us.
We feel betrayed when we talk to people at every single level, and all we get is, it's not our responsibility. We feel betrayed when the people supposed to be monitoring our water quality accept gifts from Dominion.
I also would like to know if there will be certified welders doing this, and if they will be doing inspection reports that are turned in to you so that you will know what's going on.
I believe again that that's FERC jurisdiction.
Wow, I can't believe this. I think maybe the people in Flint, Michigan had the same problem, didn't they?
Exactly.
What I want to know is how you mitigate the water being damaged.
If by that you mean the supply being damaged, I'm going to have to find an alternate source.
Will you examine evidence such as massive construction damage to wetlands from Rover Pipeline in Ohio and West Virginia as signs that the pipeline industry cannot self-regulate, and therefore will you reject this project as too great a threat to Southwest Virginia and deny Mountain Valley Pipeline water certification or loan permit?
We are informed by the fact that there have been problems in other areas, and that is in fact one of the reasons that we are planning to have on-site inspections throughout. There is no legal basis available to us to make a decision based on actions in other states.
If you sign off on a 401 certification without true public input, You are colluding with an industry that has proven it cannot self-regulate. You are condemning our community to economic and environmental degradation. I reject this process and these proceedings for the sham that they are.
The alternative hybrid 1A, which is an environmentally superior alternative which has been inadequately studied by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, because even though you may not be able to evaluate alternatives, if your science is based on crappy analysis from FERC and MVP, your science is no good. So let's look at some of the water impacts of hybrid alternative 1A. It affects, based on current best available scientific information, it affects 68 fewer wells and springs within 150 feet of the construction right away, 125 fewer wetlands crossed requiring mitigation. It avoids 3 rivers that have habitat for the Roanoke log perch and 11 tributaries that also have Roanoke log perch, 8 miles less of karst, 130 fewer karst features within 50 feet of construction right of way. All of these, would you consider these to be significant impacts? Let the record show the nod was yes.
I have not looked at hybrid 1A, and so I can compare it to the others.
Well, we'll leave you with some reading material pursuant to your request, because what you see in the FERC's federal EIS is filled with information that is not the best scientifically available information. It also has some other additional impacts. If 52 miles more of co-location, federal agencies prefer co-location, paralleling an existing right-of-way, 45 fewer residences within 50 feet of the construction work area, 5 fewer rural and historic districts, comprising 15 miles, which the State Historic Preservation Officer recently reported were going to be adversely and permanently affected by the pipeline. 4 fewer high consequence areas. You're in what's called a high consequence area. If it blows up, goodbye, we're all gone.
And I assume that FERC also has this assessment of hybrid alternative 1A.
They have the assessment.
And you'll leave it with us?
We will leave it with you.
This proposed pipeline crisis is causing severe distress among the majority of residents who understand the devastating environmental impact of the Mountain Valley Pipeline. These dedicated and hardworking American citizens must listen to the irrational and ill-informed dialogue from those advocating for the proposed MVP.
Pardon us if we seem a little distressed. We've been working on this for 3 years now, and we've run into some major untruths and inaccuracies. My concern is that you don't know where the water comes from that feeds my creek and my springs either. And I would ask that further dye testing be done, because once you start the construction for that pipeline and start the blasting and the passage of the heavy equipment that they're going to use over our fragile karst, I may lose the underground passages that provide me with the water I need, not only for my own use, for my livestock's use, and for the 250 different kinds of plants growing there, the 53 kinds of birds that use my place, and the 17 different mammal species. I care about all these things.
The draft 401 certification makes no mention or conditions for how MVP's product will affect recreational uses of our water, and what MVP must do to mitigate such impacts. This is a disregard for how the public sees and uses water for fishing, swimming, and general aesthetic use. How will DEQ ensure that recreational uses will remain fully protected during and after construction as required by Virginia law?
Farmers who raise cattle and sheep and pigs and chickens and rabbits pay a lot of attention to their water. Their well-being and the well-being of their animals depends on it. Their livelihood depends on it. Do you really think a pipeline could be built going up and down these mountains and not have serious ramifications for the water we so desperately need? Not only would the sediment caused by the runoff foul streams such as Greenbrier Branch, just behind this building, and Sinking Creek, just across the road. But the disruption to the water table in our karst topography caused by the drilling and blasting cannot be avoided. I urge you to look around as you drive through and ask yourself, seriously? Please deny the permits. Save our water, save our village, save our way of life.
I'm absolutely committed that we have to have answers that we are confident in, that are science-based, and that are based on the law before we decide how to proceed.
We're at the nexus of two of the longest dye traces in the state, if not eastern Missouri. One of them is from Clover Hollow down to that cave that I pointed out. The other one is from here to the New River. So the water that comes out there flows in the New River, and then along the way sinks. So we're talking about large karst expanse. And that's, I think, one of the most important things for everybody to know, that karst isn't just an isolated sinkhole here and there. This is just the lay of the land.
Okay.
So there you go. Now you have a visual.
I do. Yeah. It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
I absolutely understand that people are concerned and they're scared, and there's a lot of uncertainty. I thought everybody was respectful, communicated their concerns clearly, and I thought it was a great meeting.
The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers nationwide Permit 12 regulations allow for potential impairment to existing recreational and wildlife uses of waterways, which Virginia state regulations do not. In New York, the Second Circuit Court of Appeals upheld the authority of states to reject projects that impact state water quality standards and have stopped the Constitution Pipeline. Virginia DEQ and Water Control Board have the legal authority to apply Virginia water quality standards and deny Section 401 certification.
Battle signs of no pipeline all along this valley dell. I watch out my car door window as our country goes to hell. Historic homesteads, family farms devoured before my eyes. Cattle, horses, pastures, trees displaced and pushed aside. Tribal nations unite in prophecy. Death will cross a creek or lake. Ancient wisdom speaks to you and me of a big black snake. What are we doing for our children's sake? Where are we going for heaven's sake?
The DEQ will make its recommendation this fall to the State Water Control Board, who by law must make a determination within 90 days of the end of the public comment period of August 22, 2017.